Okay, here we are. I'm opening a box that had been sealed for about a decade, maybe a little bit longer. The only thing it said on the outside was Stephen King, sell. So I think probably it was books that I just didn't have room for anymore, and thought about maybe selling on eBay because that was a thing back then. I guess it still is. Um, and now I'm not sure what to do with them. But I thought I'd open the box and see what's inside, and look back on all these stories. I had a paper route, and then I worked in a drive-through espresso shop. So all that money went toward books and comic books, which many of which I still have. But that explains why these are all hardcover. I was part of the Stephen King book club, and once a month you would get a hardcover book. So anyway, so I opened this up, and the first one I took out was Insomnia. And this came out, I think, in like 97 or 98. And it was like right around the time when I kind of caught up on all of his books. I was obsessed with Clive Barker because he was the only gay author that I knew of who wrote sort of horror fantasy stuff. So I read everything of his I could, but he, by comparison, isn't as prolific with Stephen King. So I love the horror genre, and just got really deep and tried to read everything I could. And so I'd read like all of the stuff from the 70s and then 80s, and then I think I had finally caught up and like was in when this came out. I may not have got it through the book club. I might have just bought it myself. I'm not sure. But it looks like this came out in 94. Okay, so I won't tell you how old I was, but I was a teenager. And for what I remember about this book is that it was loosely based perhaps on some Greek mythology about the fates, and how I think it was three sisters, like determine the course of a life, like both its length and when it ends, and perhaps like its good or bad fortune in between. And so there was some of that in here, but the main characters, I don't remember much about them, but I think that something happens to them and they can now see people's fates as kind of auras around them. And maybe like balloon strings coming out the top of their head, and they're different colors. I think this was the first time I encountered mention of synesthesia, which has always kind of remained fascinating to me since then. And so, yeah, it's a hefty book. I remember enjoying it, but beyond what I've said, I don't think I remember much more. I think I'll keep it. Let's see what else we have in here. Okay, yeah. Different Seasons is a short story collection. Well, maybe not short story. It's a novella collection, I believe. And it's got some great ones. Some of the most classic Stephen King stories are in this collection. I believe maybe all of them, most of them have been made into movies, and you'll recognize them. But here we go. Okay, so the first one in this book is Rita Hayworth in Shawshank Redemption. So obviously made into a fantastic movie with Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman, I think. But that's, now I get why it's called Different Seasons. I probably knew this back in the day too. These were a bit of a shift from the horror that he was known for at the time. So it marked kind of a different direction for his writing. The second story in here, I have to tell you, is one of my favorites. It's Apt Pupil. And so what I loved about it was sort of the very twisted way that history reemerges. And it's this like kind of homoerotic, kind of codependent relationship between, I believe, like a former SS officer and this like kid in the town where the SS officer's hiding, and the kid gets to know his secret and maybe starts being corrupted by him. Really, really good story. I don't recall. I believe the movie might have had like maybe even like Ian McKellen and oh, that poor guy who died. The name escapes me, but I think he was also in, I want to say like The Pelican Brief or one of the John Grisham movies. But beautiful, creepy, disturbing story. Definitely recommend. And then, of course, there's like probably the most famous Stephen King story of all, The Body, which is the basis for Stand By Me, the movie. Yeah, I mean, I always remember being kind of weirded out by like how the pace and the tone is going along as the boys are exploring, and then there's this weird, over the top, comical but kind of gross moment of the like county fair where they have to like eat and eat and eat, and it's like disgusting. Um, Interesting choices he made in that story. So yeah, The Body's great. And then the final one, The Breathing Method, I don't really remember what that one's about. It says a tale told in a strange club about a woman determined to give birth no matter what. No clue. But yeah, definitely a keeper. I'm not parting with this one. Let's see what else we have in here. Oh, okay, this is a good contrast. So Nightmares and Dreamscapes, by contrast, I'm sorry for my camera being wonky. This one is a lot of short stories. So rather than novellas, you know, they can be much shorter. And I think it was like maybe like his third, fourth, I don't know, collection of short stories. And I don't recognize any of these. Popsy sounds familiar. And The Night Flyer. Yeah, I don't really remember these. This is sort of like, I would put it as like the mature version of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Like they're definitely horror. They're definitely meant to be scary. But yeah, I don't really remember that one. I would part with this for sure. I've never really. I mean, I like short stories. They're not my first love. I love a good long novel. Okay. Ooh. So this is an interesting one. This is maybe if I put my face into it. This is here we go. Desperation. This might be one of the last of his that I read. I think it was published in like the late 1990s, 1996. Okay, I thought it was later than that. But you know, it marked a change for him because most everything he'd written before then was set in Maine almost exclusively. And then this one comes out and it was set in, I want to say in Arizona, like, or no, a Nevada mountain desert town. And it's creepy. I remember it being very unexpected how it evolved. Yeah, I definitely, well, no, I'd part with that one, I guess. What else do we have in here? Ooh, okay. Yeah, this one, Misery. I mean, I loved it the first time I read it, and then I think I've read it maybe 3 times now, maybe more, but not in a long time. It's pretty cool how a lot of his characters are writers and us as like interesting and not. I don't know. I never got the sense that it was so much about like him projecting himself on these writers. Maybe I would see that differently now. But anyway, in comparison to a lot of his stories, the characters in Misery stand out. We have Paul Sheldon and Annie Wilkes, and yeah, I mean, you can remember them. I mean, it helps too that this was made into one of the best adaptations of Stephen King book. With I want to say Gene Hackman. I don't know if that's true, but definitely Kathy Bates. The book jacket copy describes Annie Wilkes as a huge ex-nurse. I don't think that would fly today. I think maybe we've updated our ethics on that. But yeah, great book. Oh, and so creepy, right? To be trapped and to be mutilated. So it's got body horror, it's got psychological horror, it's got, you start to feel for Annie, and then as a reader, you're kind of like, oh wait, I have Stockholm syndrome too, and Paul, the character, does. Yeah, this is a really great book. Okay, this one's interesting. Salem's Lot. So, from what I remember, this is like pretty classic vampire story. Maybe it has some twists. I don't remember what they are, but I remember reading it and being like, oh, like this is kind of like a vampire story, but maybe a little bit updated. Um, I saw something online a little while ago that said it was like one of the most classically plotted and paced books of his. So yeah, I think I would read this again and maybe see what I think. I think maybe the character's a journalist. Not sure. It definitely nailed the mood and the setting, though, from what I remember. Oh, okay. This is a fun one. So, Firestarter. Is there anything scarier than creepy children? That's maybe not being fair, because I think the story is told from a lot of the little girl's perspective. She's a pyrokinetic person. She can start fires with her mind. That is so cool. In my memory and in my like childhood mythography of all the stories I enjoyed, this sits alongside Escape from Witch Mountain, which was a creepy Disney live action movie with like telekinetic kids who are maybe orphans and they're going in search of a mystery. I love that shit. Yeah, recommend Firestarter. I think this also, if I recall correctly, has like a lot of reported elements, like the police officers and scenes of the crime reports and like news articles. Maybe I'm misremembering, but I don't know. I love that stuff too. Little epigraphs at the start of chapters. Okay, yeah. Cujo. Scared the shit out of me. Dogs off the chain with rabies are scary, and so is being trapped in a car for a few days with no one to help you. Yeah, this is kind of like I don't know if I would say classic, but maybe iconic, or I don't know. I mean, it. I haven't read it in a really long time, but I remember being like, "Oh shit, this is scary." So one thing I love about all of these hardcovers is that they come with these like big ass author photos on the back. like that's a huge. It takes it. Look all the way from there to there. Huge face of Stephen King, who in the beard and the hair and everything in his younger days was kind of a snack. Probably shouldn't set it down on camera. Okay, yeah. So Christine, this one I would part with. Yeah, if you want to buy this from me, I would totally sell it. I've never been that into cars, and so killer cars, I'm into more. Yeah, I just this one I was kind of like, I don't have any fond memories of it. I do. I mean, I wrote Believe and Live, a short story which featured killer self-driving cars. So maybe that stuck with me. But yeah, not for me. Oh, okay. The Dead Zone. Yes, big fan. What I appreciate about this book is the way that it positions. Well, from what I remember, the main character sees the future. He like gets injured, like maybe a head trauma, and then he like can see the future, but it's not like he sees the future all the time. He like saw one glimpse of the future, which was really bad, and I think that was like maybe a politician who's evil, like gets a lot of power and then like ruins it for everyone. Possibly, well, I won't spoil it, but way to predict the future, Stephen King. Thank you for that. And so what I appreciated about the way that this handled that prescience is that it made it a burden. almost a curse. You know, a lot of times, I think I guess especially in comic books, but in mythography, people get powers and like suddenly they're powerful and everything's like golden and rosy. This one was like, no, seeing the future, man, that sucks. It has that in common with Dune by Frank Herbert, really, where, you know, seeing the future basically ruins their lives, and it puts their lives in service of trying to prevent a bad future from coming to pass. So yeah, I'd recommend this definitely. Also, like really strong setting. I remember a gazebo, a state fair, yeah, maybe a church. Yeah, a lot of good setting in the book. And then the last one from this box, at least, is It. Thunk. This is a big ass book. So, what to say about this? I mean, of course, there have been multiple adaptations of this, and you know, like I think both of them got it right in some ways, but I think there's a lot about the book that's difficult to translate, including some of the parts that I really enjoy. So, one thing I loved about it is that it kind of dips its toe into the Stephen King multiverse, the cosmology, which is center stage in his Dark Tower series. But you have and the spider beings coming into it in the book, especially in a kind of a cool way, I thought. And I think those don't get adapted in film very well. What else to say about it? I mean, it kind of, the way that it included two braided stories, one from the 50s and one from the 80s, showing like the kids and then their adult trauma. That was really cool, and probably, you know, more complex than anything else I'd read by him previously. You know, it got some parts wrong. I didn't feel great when I read kind of how some of the kids are teased for, you know, they're called faggot, and I didn't like that. But, you know, back then we didn't have a lot of options for avoiding media that was homophobic. I mean, it was everywhere, and you kind of had to just like live with it and maybe like silently resist in your mind as you're reading a book, but you know, it takes a toll. Yeah, and then there was like some content around HIV and AIDS that I thought was like, even when I read it in like the 90s, I was like, oh, that's painful to read. And you know, that's like on top of everything else that's like super horror and bloody and gross about this book. So I think, you know, it succeeded at being disturbing. I enjoyed it. I think, you know, looking at it now, I'd be like, I wouldn't tell that story that way. But then again, who am I? I'm just some author no one's heard of. So yeah, that has been my trip down memory lane. You know, there's a couple other books I would mention that I don't have in front of me. I think maybe they're on a shelf somewhere, or maybe I've already parted with them. One is The Tommyknockers, which is not so great. And Stephen King writes about why that book wasn't so great, even in his estimation, in his book on writing, titled On Writing. But Needful Things, which I don't see here and I thought I had, is a great book. You know, the way that it includes all these minor characters and gives them interesting arcs and then weaves them together into one huge, spectacular showdown is really great. I enjoyed that a lot. So if I find more books, I'll do this again, and we'll do some more mini reviews. But thanks for watching, and see you next time.